Let's bring in tonight's panel, constitutional law attorney and legal analyst Amir Benno and TV host and education activist Cynthia Garrett. Appreciate you both being with us this evening. Amir, I want to start with you. You saw those numbers that Steve outlined, $30 million January 6th versus $1 billion in those 2020 riots that we saw. It seems to me that these district attorneys in Manhattan are just inviting more of what we saw last year. Your thoughts?
Jen, you're correct about that. And it's not just Manhattan, obviously. When we talk about the violence that just took place this past weekend in Chicago, one of the main reasons is Kimberly Fox, who is the Cook County state's attorney, the DA there. She has actually promoted a policy in her office where there's a presumption not to prosecute anybody who is arrested for disorderly conduct or looting or any sort of violence against a police officer during a riot. And so she also has this presumption to dismiss cases in any case in which a police officer is the complainant. So we have these progressive DAs throughout the country. We've got them in Manhattan. We've got them in Chicago. We've got them in San Francisco and in LA. And they are a real reason for why this violence is exploding.
Sure. So, Cynthia, I want to ask you about the trouble in recruiting police, because we're seeing, because of the dangers, because of the disrespect for police, a lot of people, understandably, don't want to get into the profession. And I've got a quote to read to you from the head of the Fraternal Order of Police for Philadelphia, a guy named Mike Nealon. He calls this, quote, a perfect storm. He said hundreds of guys are retiring or are taking other jobs, and that they're having real problem getting quality applicants who want to become policemen. Do you fear that this could become a national and lasting trend with really dire consequences for our country?
Absolutely. And by the way, when the motto is to protect and to serve, if I wanted to be a police officer today, I would ask myself, protect whom and serve what? We're being completely demoralized as a country by a party that's telling us, it's a horrible thing to be an American. Why protect America? Why not just dismantle it and start over again? Macy Gray calling for a removal of the flag. I mean, there's so much absurd, far left, crazy thinking that's going on. If my young son wanted to be a police officer, I would probably ask him if he'd lost his mind. And I got to tell you, I came home to my home in California probably 3 weeks ago, for the first time in my life, to find my home broken into, completely just vandalized and ransacked, by a group that I had 12 to 15 police officers in my home in Laguna for 2 days, and I couldn't love on them enough. And I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of them. And I had one woman police officer literally get tears in her eyes when she told me that one of her current cases is against a guy who spit on her because he had COVID, and they're getting spit on as a part of their day-to-day routine so that they might get infected with COVID. The stuff they're dealing with is crazy, and they're trying to protect us. And it doesn't make any sense, because at the end of the day, you can't tell me, and we all know that statistics do not support that the police, the majority of police, are bad and deserve to be destroyed and vandalized and treated badly. You can't tell me the majority of white cops are not killing blacks. You just spoke about the violence in Chicago. Black on black crime is a bigger problem than white cops killing blacks. And we've got to deal with the fact that fatherlessness is pretty much, I believe, the cancer that is destroying the black community and why we have such high rates of black on black crime.
Amir, I want to ask you about this quickly. The administration's stance seems to be not quite focused on the root causes of what's going on in terms of this violence across our cities. Let's hear what Jen Psaki had to say about this rise in violence.
There's been actually a rise in crime over the last 5 years, but really the last 18 months. And so it's an opportunity for the president to speak to what he's going to do to help address that. It is an area where the president feels a great deal of the crime we're seeing as a result of gun violence. You can expect he'll speak to that and his commitment to continuing to address gun violence and gun safety.
I mean, that's the Democrats' go-to. It's always the gun violence. It's always on the guns versus the people actually pulling the trigger.
Yeah, look, Chicago's got probably, or Illinois has the strongest gun control laws in the country. And yet you're seeing all this gun violence. More laws are not going to change this. What's happening is they're discouraging police officers from joining the ranks or people from becoming police officers. They're not prosecuting the offenders. They're encouraging people to go out there. They're not afraid of getting caught. They're not afraid of retaliation. So they're settling scores right now, and that's what's happening. I mean, and you have Lori Lightfoot in Chicago who's saying the public health crisis is racism, but she turns a blind eye to gang violence in her city. They need to focus on that issue, and they need to start getting behind the police officers, stop defunding the police, stop getting rid of cash bail, give judges back their discretion to set bail, stop refusing to prosecute people for low-level crimes. These sorts of things. This is what the progressive prosecutors, the mayors, and Governor Pritzker in Illinois are doing, and that's why we're seeing this surge in violence.
Yeah, well, Amir Benno, Cynthia Garrett, we appreciate you both being with us tonight. And be sure to pick up Cynthia's book, I Choose Victory, Moving from Victim to Victor.